Just like last year, CD Projekt Red once again set E3 on fire with Cyberpunk 2077 and a surprise guest, the legend himself, Keanu Reeves. And even though we didn't learn much from the trailer that the public has been shown, the developers have revealed a lot of things about their game through interviews and behind closed door presentations. And if the expectations that they've set for us are to be fulfilled, then Cyberpunk 2077 might not only turn out to be a great game, but also to be the most impressive immersive sim yet, and pave the way for the future of the genre. The immersive sim design philosophy is not in the best shape it's ever been right now, and unfortunately I don't expect us to be graced with many more immersive sims in the near future. The biggest thing preventing us from getting more of these games, other than the fact that this is a very difficult type of games to develop, obviously, is the video game market itself. The last few years we've seen a revival of the genre, but it didn't last very long. Yes, it gave birth to a few very good games, it's true, but unfortunately also to a few disappointing ones. But the common factor between them is that they didn't sell much. And this is quite a problem. It doesn't matter if a game is critically acclaimed and loved by fans when it is unsuccessful at piquing the interest of the general public. Now we have no new Deus Ex or Dishonored in sight. Prey was great, but I very much doubt that we'll soon see a sequel, and unfortunately, what we've seen and heard so far of the soon-to-be released Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 and the two System Shock games being worked on right now is not necessarily encouraging. A whole lot of players, and thus potential clients, also struggle with the concept of immersive sims. It is infamously known that the playtesting for Dishonored went two ways. Either the players got along with the systemic, reactive and emergent design of the game, coming up with new ways to use the tools put at their disposal on the fly, and even sometimes surprising the developers, or the players got quickly confused at how much freedom they had in the game, or rather didn't realize that they had any freedom at all, and ended up being stuck quite soon waiting for the game to give them clear directions to follow. It's also interesting to point out that Bethesda's Fallout and Elder Scrolls series, while not really being pure immersive sims, were probably the games that kept this philosophy alive for quite a while. But with every new release, they seem to take a step back and give it up little by little. Surprisingly though, the games that do not strictly belong to this genre but still take inspiration from it, made by developers trying to apply systemic and reactive design mechanics to their games, usually do quite well. Metal Gear Solid 5 and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild being the two prime examples of this. Both have been praised by critics and players alike, and both have had a huge commercial success. Moreover, action, adventure and RPGs are not the only genres that borrow some of these game design ideas. Some strategy games like Crusader Kings 2 or Mountain Blade, for example, are quite famous for the freedom they give to the players. Their systemic and reactive design really sets them apart from the rest of the strategy games, and thanks to this, they managed to get a huge following throughout the years. So there's obviously a market somewhere for immersive sim games, and the fact that most of the AAA games borrowing elements from immersive sims are doing so well means that there's hope to see yet another revival of the genre. And Cyberpunk 2077 might very well be the game that'll bring the spotlight to this design philosophy once again. However, I was at first somewhat skeptical about this. Not about whether Cyberpunk would be a good game, that I have no doubt, and I have very high hopes for this one. But even though until this year's E3 a lot of clues were pointing in the direction of the developers trying to bring an immersive design to their game, I still had doubts that the next CDPR game could be considered an immersive sim. But not anymore. Thanks to this year's behind closed door showcase and the many interviews that the team gave to the journalists and YouTubers, it is now clear that Cyberpunk 2077 was made with the immersive sim design philosophy in mind. To the great narrative experience and the splendid open world of The Witcher 3, the developers wanted to add freedom of gameplay to Cyberpunk. This is something that Mateusz Tomaszkiewicz, I hope I didn't mispronounce his name too bad, quest director on Cyberpunk 2077 insisted on in an interview with Young Year. We paid lots of attention in adding this level of non-linearity in terms of gameplay. We've put a lot of attention and focus on giving the player the freedom to play the game the way they would want it to be played. Everything in the game seems to have been made for the player to be immersed in the world, and to give us the ultimate role-playing experience. The developers tried their best to replicate the feeling of freedom in both story and gameplay that you get when playing a pen and paper RPG. Like has said Miles Tuss, senior level designer on Cyberpunk 2077, in an interview with GamerHub TV. The game has its root in the pen and paper game, and everyone who's ever played a pen and paper game knows that they give you an unprecedented sense of freedom. And this is our attempt to bring pen and paper into AAA game environments and giving you the freedom to do exactly what you want to do. It is obviously a very difficult thing to translate into a video game. In a pen and paper RPG, you can do pretty much anything that comes to mind. But if you want to do it, you'll need to rely on systems. These systems will allow the game to react to the player's actions, even if the developers didn't foresee these actions. Basically, that means getting rid of a lot of scripts, and both giving the means to the players to do what they want, and to the game to react accordingly to what the players will do with that freedom of action. We want to give players a huge set of tools that you can use to really create the character that you want and play it in the way that you want to play it. From what we know so far, it seems that CDPR put lots of effort into making their game systemic and reactive, and given that, we can imagine that they also managed to enable emergence of gameplay. Systems, reactions, and emergence are probably the three biggest pillars on which is built the immersive sim design philosophy. The fact that CDPR seems to be banking on all three is very exciting to say the least. During the gameplay presentation and the interviews, the dev put the emphasis on the fact that you can play through all the missions in many different ways. You can go in through the front door, guns blazing, sneak behind the enemies and take them down silently, or entirely rely on your hacking abilities, for example. They even made sure that you can play through the entire game without killing anyone. Here's what Miles Tuss had to say about it. This is the big thing this game is about. It's about you and how you want to play it. This is actually one of our core pillars when it comes to designing this game. In The Witcher 3 we try to marry a gripping narrative with an immersive and rich open world. With Cyberpunk we're adding a third ingredient into it, which is freedom of gameplay. No doubt about it, it sounds very promising.
V, my man, you made it. You blowing up all over the news.
CD Projekt is now a renowned name for a studio full of very talented and passionate people. Their communication and marketing strategy of being close to the players even seems to be more of a genuine effort to make the players happy rather than a simple, cold-blooded way to earn more money. And even if ultimately CDPR is still a company and thus aims to not only survive but also prosper, it is one that usually don't hesitate to trust. If not for their games, and their games are good for sure, at least for the way they handle themselves. They're all about the players, and it shows. This is something that I'm sure we would all love to see more of in the industry. And one thing is for certain, the players are reciprocating the love they are given. The Witcher 3 has been widely successful, and already a third of Cyberpunk 2077 digital pre-orders on PC have been made on GOG, which is owned by CD Projekt Red. Because of all that, CDPR making a game inspired by the immersive sim design philosophy might be the boost that the genre had been looking for all this time. And if they are successful at creating a huge, seamless, narratively driven, systemic and reactive role-playing game, it might be a sign that immersive sims need to take inspiration from Cyberpunk and adapt in the right direction to be successful again. Thank you for watching until the end. I hope that you liked this short video. I definitely enjoyed making it, and spending so much time talking about Cyberpunk 2077 has certainly not weakened the hype I have for this game. By the way, if you want to know what was shown in the behind closed door presentation in this year's E3, I suggest you to go watch Youngie's video about it. It's just very good content, very informative, and he goes in depth into what was shown during the presentation. Also, if you want to see more of that type of content, consider subscribing. It's the best thing you can do to encourage me, and trust me, it goes a long way. With that being said, I hope you'll have a wonderful day, take care and see you next time.